Hello and welcome to Sidequest. This is our weekly video game show here at Geekverse. I'm your host, Still Musk, and I have with me the Sevastopol Taylor Field. How are you doing, my friend?
I'm doing good. Happy to be here. Very excited for this topic of discussion.
Me too. This episode, you could say, is in collaboration with the Alien Retrospective that we've been doing because today we are talking all about Alien Isolation, the 2014 survival horror game from Creative Assembly. And this should be a fun one. I think it's kind of a long time coming. This is a game that I've definitely had in my radar for years and years, but never played it. And I know this is a game that you are a fan of, so it should be a fun discussion. And that's really all we're talking about today. I think I'll just keep it short here with the plugs and just say that, as I mentioned, like Alien Romulus is coming out, and so we have gone through and done retrospectives of every Alien movie that exists, including the two AVP movies. And this is kind of the I don't know. I don't think this is the last thing releasing on the main feeds. Everything's out on Patreon right now, but this is at least the last thing that me and you are recording prior to Romulus coming out in a couple weeks here. So it's kind of a nice cap on the end of this thing. So it should be a good time. So let's just get right into it. So as I said, this game came out in 2014. Creative Assembly is the developer who is kind of most known for all the Total War games that exist and all the million spin-offs and DLCs. So it's, right up Kirkland's alley in that way. But they're an interesting studio. Like, they just have so many games. If you go on their Wikipedia page, it's insane how many things they've worked on over the years. I also see that they worked on Halo Wars 2. I don't know if they did the first one.
I don't think
Uh,
they did the first one.
yeah, so interesting there. They've done some sports games. And also, I found this interesting that in 1990, for the MS-DOS, really, really old back in the day, they worked on a game called Infestation, which I've never heard anyone talk about. But if you go and look into that game, it's described as, a science fiction scenario type thing based on Alien and Aliens and that kind of some of the, I don't know, I guess the stuff from those movies. So it's interesting that way back in the 90s, the studio, when they were first starting out, probably just a handful of people at the studio at that time, made a game that's kind of inspired by Alien. And then, what is that, 24 years later, they get the opportunity to make an actual Alien game that is, canon and in the universe and all that. So it's pretty interesting about that. It's hard to find any information on this game because there's other games called Infestation, and they've totally consumed them in the search engine optimization. I can see a couple images here, but it's really hard to find any info. Even the Wikipedia page for that doesn't even list Creative Assembly as the developer, but then on Creative Assembly's Wikipedia, it shows that they made this game, so it's very strange, and I don't know much about that one. But otherwise, yeah, it's really just all these hundreds of Total War games that they've made. So I bring that up just to say that it's interesting that they made this game in general. Obviously, it seems like there was some interest there from the developers. Even Halo Wars is kind of an interesting, oh, look at that, kind of some comparisons there in terms of the sci-fi and the aliens that exist in that game, the Covenant. But they've never really made, as far as I can tell, a game similar to this prior in their history. And since then, they haven't really made anything quite like it since, just back onto the Total War and Halo Wars stuff. So it's kind of a weird pocket that exists for the studio, but it's interesting nonetheless. Uh, Tell me about your history with this game. Did you play it when it came out in 2014? Were you a late bloomer? Did you come to it later? What's your history with it?
Oh, I was there day one when this game came out. I remember I didn't move to town here yet, so I remember just getting it, playing the daylights out of it, loving it. It was just such a good time, and I can't believe it's actually been a decade now that I think about it.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Now, when I moved here, started working at Target,
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure this is one of the reasons me and Kirkland's friendship started because we'd
Okay,
be
I
in
love it.
electronics and we'd be talking about oh, what was the other one called?
Outlast, was it? The original Outlast?
No, it was the oh my gosh, Dying Light.
Dying Light,
The
right?
zombie
Okay.
parkour game.
Yes.
So that was the one we talk about all the time, and Alien Isolation was the other. We would just be chatting about
Nice.
all morning, and it was just such a great such a great thing to discuss. And yeah, the game does not disappoint. It's something that I find that I'll go back every few. I wouldn't say months, but every year I'll indulge in this game just to put myself in the stressful situation. It
Yeah.
holds up so well for me, and it's just such a to me it's a no brainer. Like this just such a great setting and a great kind of ode to the original and just a great kind of concept to just put Alien and just this kind of like stealth sneaking around kind of gameplay mechanic and just pile it all together. So to have this, and I'll just say it, to not have a sequel, to me, it's a shame. But
Yeah, yeah, it's interesting that you say that because just looking into the development of this game and some other things, like apparently one of the earlier prototypes for this game was as a third-person game as well. But I think, as you mentioned, like this is, I feel like the perfect formula for a game like this. So I think it's good what they ended up going with first-person in the end, and I'm sure even the third-person gameplay would have been quite similar and all that to what they ended up doing here. When you say that you kind of revisit it, I'm guessing that means you'll just jump in for a mission or two, just revisit parts of it, or are you replaying the whole game? Because that was I think maybe the biggest surprise for me when I actually played through this is that this game's a lot longer than I would expect.
I think it's like
than it should be,
19 missions or
opinion.
something, right?
Yeah, I think it's 18, 19 missions. How Long to Beat puts it around like 18 to 20 hours. I ended up beating it quicker than that, but I also did after first couple hours dropped it down to like the easiest difficulty. So I'm sure I was cruising through it quicker than maybe the average playtime in that way. But yeah, for like a survival horror game, and also one that's like a very cinematic experience that's trying to make you feel like an alien movie, I think it is a very long game. So yeah, when you're revisiting it, have you ever played through the full game again, or are you more just kind of revisiting sections of it?
I haven't played through the full game again, but there's certain sections, and I like to replay the Crew Expendable DLC. That's just I just like it. It's just
Is that the Ripley one? Is that or
that's
not?
the Ripley one?
Okay.
Yeah, where you're on the
The
Nostromo.
Ellen Ripley one.
The Ellen Ripley one. Yeah, I just really like it. It's such a fun thing. But there's certain things that I like to experience from the game. There's certain missions I like to do. Like I mean, just being able to do the we'll talk more about it, but the derelict ship. Like oh my god,
Right.
it's fun.
Yeah. So as you like you kind of playing this game every once in a while, and I think for this episode you haven't played through the whole game again, but you've played through like sections of it again. I don't know, did you have any new or different takes, or especially since we've been going through the Alien movies when you played through it this time, anything kind of different come up that you weren't expecting?
The main thing, I mean, different. No, not necessarily. It just kind of sticks like more questions in my mind. And when you go through the movies, you get answers to certain things, and you get no answers to other things. But the main thing that I just wonder with the story, and I appreciate that this takes place between the first two movies, and I appreciate that this character essentially is just manifested out of a extended deleted scene from the second Alien movie, which is crazy to think about when you tie it all together. But I really just wonder where all the eggs came from. And I've looked into people talking about it, and it just comes down to like, well, there must be a queen somewhere, but we never see it because the station gets blown up or whatever. Even then, we know that, okay, well, the one person got infected with an embryo and then was brought back, and that was the end of it. But then where did all the eggs come from? So that's just, and we know there's multiple hives, yada yada. It's just, that's the only thing that always kind of like leaves me curious every time I go through those missions, trying to figure it out. But it's just one of those things. As for anything that really stands out and is different, I mean, it's maybe just ways that I'm evading the alien, ways that I think it's fun to kind of deal with humans, whether it's like I'm running and I fire off shots, and obviously the alien's going to hear you, and then all of a sudden, like, I'm in a locker, and I know the two humans are like stalking, like moving around with their guns, and then you wait like 40 seconds to a minute, and then you just hear the alien charge out, and the alien kills them, and then Saunders off. It's like, okay, you know, that the alien and me are on a team now. We're working together.
The only game that lets you team up with the aliens.
Yeah.
That's funny. Yeah, I have a different backstory history with this one. I can't remember when the first time I kind of experienced or saw this game was, but this is one of Briggs's favorite games. And so I've just watched Briggs play it many times through certain sequences. And I think the biggest thing that stood in my memory was just a lot of events in this game. And then I remember just how scary the xenomorph can be. And those are kind of my two preconceptions going in. But it is a game that I feel like weirdly doesn't get talked about a lot, even though I feel like it is a very well made, very like high budget, polished experience. So it was fun to go through it, and I finally went through and played through the whole thing. I did not have time to play through the Nostromo DLC thing, so you'll have to tell me more about that. I saw that it's pretty short, but I just didn't have time, unfortunately. So I'll bring it up on Sidequest because I did buy it recently on the Steam summer sale, but I'll bring that up when I have played it in the future. But yeah, playing through it, and it was a weird experience for me, Taylor. I can't remember the last time I've been both so hot and so cold on a game at the same time. There are things I absolutely love about this game and I think are so impressive, and then there's so many things that drive me freaking crazy as well. So I'm excited to get into all of it. But I think for me, like the pros, like the biggest of the pros would just be the aesthetics of this game. This game is so beautiful. The lighting is unreal. The sound effects and sound design and music are all just perfect. Like the commitment to the source material without it being just derivative of the things that it's based on is so great. Like I can't think of the last time I've played a licensed game like this that feels like it has so much of its own identity while still being based within the world of something that is pre-existing. It's just really impressive in that way. And then like the xenomorph, I think, is such a big success in this game, and even looking into it even more than my just one playthrough, because I feel like there's so much going on that you'll never know everything the xenomorph is capable of and all the things it's doing in one playthrough. But I watched some videos and just reading up on what all the AI tech that is input into that thing is so interesting as well. So I'm excited to break down some of that. And I think some of these sequences in this game are truly fantastic, and I just love all the tech in here. There's so many little details that are so very impressive. I think as far as the story goes, like the story is like as good as any Alien movie for the most part. It's not really. It's more about the vibes and the place and the setting than it is like the actual plot that's going on in these movies. Maybe with the exception of Prometheus, which is doing a lot more in terms of the story, and maybe you could say Covenant, but the execution's not quite as good there. But I think it kind of gets the job done, and it's interesting what you're saying there, how it's kind of based off a character that is mentioned in a scene that doesn't even end up in the theatrical release, and they kind of take that and go in a whole bunch of different directions with it. But I think where my issues come in with this game are in a few ways. One, as I mentioned, it is way too long. And I think for the way this game's designed and like the kind of mastery of the systems that I think you would get the more you play it, and how interesting the xenomorph is, I feel like this game would do a lot better if it was a lot shorter, and this would be a game that I'd want to replay and kind of master it. But after playing one playthrough, I'm like so burnt out on the gameplay of it that I don't want to do that again, because there are a lot of sequences that are really dull. Whenever you have a spacesuit on in this game, and you move so freaking slow and you're not doing anything. And then just other sequences where I like the backtracking element of it. I like kind of going through the space station again and kind of feeling interconnected. But yeah, some of these sequences are just really slow paced. And then, the save system is visually cool, and I think I like some elements of it, but I think because it isn't a free saving system, and some of these sequences, like, you're just hiding a lot for sometimes like 20 minutes or something, and then if you just die, then you just have to go back, because there is autosave in this game, but I found it never really autosaved when I needed it to, when I felt like I went through a long story sequence. I feel like it doesn't autosave in some of those sequences, which is really surprising to me. I feel like a lot of the mechanics in here are kind of half-baked. Like there's really cool ideas there, inklings or strings to pull on, but then when you do pull on them, they kind of unravel. And then I think, one thing that is both a great commitment to its source material in terms of how strong the xenomorph is, but also how strong the facehuggers are, translates to really bad gameplay at times, where the facehuggers are these tiny little bastards that are really hard to hit, really hard to shoot, but then they insta-kill you even on the easiest difficulty. It's like, yes, it makes sense that they would do that, but at some points you have to decide what's better for a video game versus what's better for a movie, and I feel like this game kind of gets lost in that a lot, in terms of it's not really committing to full-on being just like an interactive movie, and not committing to being more of like, a lot of times the game feels like kind of like an immersive sim type game, in terms of like a feels like a Dishonored or a Prey, in terms of how much freedom you have with all the mechanics given to you. But then it gets stuck between those two things, between the story and the immersive sim element of it, that I feel like it kind of gets lost in the shuffle at times too. So, but I think truly one of the biggest compliments I can say is that I am just so fascinated by this game. I think it's such a wonder that it exists, and like it just feels like one of the most expensive games ever. It's 10 years old, but it still looks like a modern AAA game, with the exception of maybe like some mocap on like faces or like a couple character movements. But otherwise, like the game still looks top notch. And after it was done, I just went and consumed a bunch of YouTube videos, seeing like people's different thoughts on it, or learning more about the mechanics that I missed, because it is just such a fascinating game. So I'm really glad it exists. I'm glad that I finally have played it, because it's been a big big on the backlog there for a long time, so I'm glad I finally did it. But just because of how long it is, I don't know how much it's one I would revisit other than going to check out that Nostromo DLC that you mentioned. I think that's like maybe a nice bite because that's like less than an hour long, right?
It's super short. Yeah.
Because it's not like the whole events of Alien 1. It's just
No, it's
because that would be crazy if they made the whole events of Alien 1 like
That would
just
be
a random
crazy.
DLC. Yeah, it's just like the ending sequence, right? Like
That's
the escape
exactly it. You're
sequence.
dropped in. Some people have died, and yeah, you gotta get the bombs armed, whatnot, and get to
Okay,
the
yeah.
escape hatch. And I find it very difficult because the Nostromo is very narrow, and the alien just gets in the freaking way
Yeah.
so easily, and it's so hard to get around him and outmaneuver him. Which is again one of the problems that I would say I have with the base game is the alien can be really annoying, and I can appreciate how you're very limited and how different things that you craft can basically work to get rid of it. The flame, once you get the flamethrower is like a big game changer.
Yes.
Because
big
everything
time.
before that, it's like your gun's not going to do much. I mean, the stun baton, just use it on yourself. I'm pulling my hair out with the
Yeah.
alien comes up with that thing. So
One thing that I didn't experience it, but I also didn't feel like I was pushing it to the limits. Is that it's just there's no possible way to kill a xenomorph in this game, right? Like all you can do is scare them off,
yeah,
and then you
yeah.
can kill like face huggers, of course. But yeah, that's an interesting choice. Let's get right into it. I think we're gonna just break open the spoiler gates here. We're not gonna hold back on anything. This game's 10 years old, so we haven't played it yet. I think we'd both recommend to go play it if you're a fan of Alien. And apparently the Switch port is really good for this game. I think I read that somewhere, so that's pretty sweet because normally a game that looks as good as this, I would not expect that to be the case. But I don't know. I played it on PC, and I'm always worried when I'm playing a game on PC. Is it going to run very well? But this game ran perfectly. I mean, it's 10 years old, but it's still, like I said, it looks so good. So I expected it to run worse than it did. How about we talk about the Xenomorph first here? Talk more about these mechanics. I had a funny. I'm glad you brought up the flamethrower there. I had a kind of funny. I had like a bit of the RPG problem. When you're playing an RPG and you're getting all these health potions in your inventory, but then you never want to use them because you want to like save them for when you like most truly need them. And then by the end of the game, you like just have hundreds of health potions because you never ended up using any of them. I kind of had a lot of that experience playing through this game where I'm like, okay, I can only have 3 noisemakers in my pocket at any given time. I'm just gonna save them for when I need them. And then I found by the time the game was over, I like barely used a lot of that kind of extra. A lot of extra equipment that I had, but the flamethrower is one that I was really using a lot in the end of the game. And the reason I wasn't using it earlier when I first got it is the first time I used it, I wasn't planning on using it, but the alien, he heard me, saw me, whatever it was, so he was running after me. So I whipped out the flamethrower and just blasted him. And I guess I either was too far away when I was shooting, or I didn't, put enough fire into him, but he just came up to me and killed me. And I was like, okay, I guess the flamethrower is not to be used on the Xenomorph, or maybe I didn't do it right or something. So I kind of scared me off of using it. I'm like, that's not a very useful tool, I guess. So I didn't use it for like another like 3 or 4 hours. But then in the end of the game, I was using it a ton because I finally used it correctly and realized that, yeah, if you're still really close to him, it won't work because you got to get like a good amount of fuel blasted into him there. But yeah, that was like a very good get out of jail free card to just blast him with some flames, send him into the vents there as he backs away. And then he'll usually come back pretty quick, but at least it buys you a little bit of time. But one thing that I found interesting that I didn't really experience, and maybe it's more of if you'd be playing the game on nightmare difficulty, is just how much the alien will adapt to the things you're doing. And one thing I saw is that apparently the Xenomorph does straight up get like evolves to be like fire repellent, essentially. If you use the flamethrower too much, it'll get to a point where he can just resist the flames of it. Like I guess in theory, if it's not always the same xenomorph, but it's like different ones that are growing and evolving over time as the course of you're on this ship, they can like get to the point where they're just fully heat resistant, so you can't really do any damage with the flamethrower if you're overusing that, which is such a cool idea. I think it's really smart and interesting.
And I think people just can kind of become maybe overly reliant on it, and it's you don't want when you introduce a flamethrower, yes, it's a game changer at the start, but you don't want people to be reliant on it. You don't want it to ruin everything moving forward, because you want to keep that danger factor and that stress factor with dealing with the Xeno. But I would agree with you. There's a lot of things that I found that I just really don't end up using. My best tool I have is hiding in a locker, and I utilize that more than anything else. Obviously, you got health packs and stuff you can use too, but I mean, you're not doing that. You're not using health when you're dealing with the Xeno. When the Xeno finds you, you're dead. So you're really
Yeah.
only dealing it when you're dealing with the synthetics, which are a pain in the butt, and
Yes. The
humans with
working
guns,
Joes.
which
Is there
you
a way to
can.
close the locker quietly? Because I feel like no matter what I
I
did,
know, I
he
hate that.
slams that door closed every
Oh,
time.
even when
And
you're
even
getting
opening it,
out, you just
smashes
smash
it.
it open. Jesus. Yeah, that bothers me so much because every time I get in there, I just feel like, oh, I've been had. I like he's gonna know where I am. But
Hmm.
no, it's when you're running, then that gives it away. But no, slamming a locker door, the alien does not hear
Yeah.
anything.
Yeah, that was another thing that I saw too. That apparently, if the alien at any point sees you enter a locker, from that point on, they will really like open locker doors and like hunt for you in there. So if you're using like, I guess that's the point. No matter what it is, whether it's equipment, whether it's a hiding spot, some other tool, if you just use the same thing over and over again, they'll really start to kind of work around it. And so I don't know. Has that happened to you, where an alien's gone up and opened a locker that you have been hiding in, or have you been pretty stealthy with it? They're not quite sure if you ever entered that locker in the first place.
No, I've been found many a time in a locker, and it drives me nuts because, at least from my experience, and maybe I was just misreading it, but when I'm in the locker, you can hold your breath, and I swear it doubles
I
down
didn't
like, oh,
know
you
that.
can hold left trigger or you can hold click in the left stick, because the alien will get up close and put its head like right up against the
Oh
grate of
yeah.
the locker, and it's like, okay, and it'll prompt you hold your breath, and so you do that, and then your character starts to flash out like they're bleeding out because you can't hold your breath forever.
Yeah.
But if you let go too soon, the alien like insta rips the door off and just like grabs you.
Wow. Nice.
Have you
Yeah, I
been?
didn't.
Have you not been caught?
Not from a locker, but I didn't use a lot. I was more of a under the desk kind of guy,
Oh, that
crouching.
freaks me out. I feel like, how
Yeah.
does he not see
I
me?
know. There was a couple times where I swear he looked at me and then just looked away. I did get caught a couple times under a desk or something. But yeah, even just like, because when you're out there and not in a locker and you see when they walk by you and then just that long slithery tail is kind of, it's almost like smacking into you or something, right? It
Hmm.
gets pretty terrifying. But yeah, I didn't use a ton of lockers, probably because it was just so loud that I felt like if I was trying to run away from him, I did not want to go in a locker because he would definitely hear me. And so instead, I'd prefer to go for a under a counter. And I also felt like it gave me a bit more maneuverability that way too, rather than kind of committing to in or out of a locker. But yeah, I don't
Hmm.
think I ever got caught inside a locker, thankfully. But yeah, apparently other things too, like throwing like a noisemaker machine will work, but then eventually if you use too many of them, the xenomorph will kind of start to like triangulate your location and determine like, okay, where was this thing thrown from? I'm gonna go in that room. Or just sometimes they just really hunt your room for like 2 or 3 or 5 minutes at a time before they leave, and then sometimes they'll do like a fake out where they go to the door, leave, and then like come right back in.
And they fast walk back into the room, and you're like,
Yeah.
oh, oh.
Yeah. Yeah, and I found too, like the xenomorph can sometimes just be like this huge lumbering presence, like making so much noise walking around. But then sometimes they're just so freaking quiet that you really have no idea unless you're using your motion tracker. But even then, if they're like standing still for a bit, they might not pop up on the motion tracker, so it can be pretty difficult to determine them.
Have you been caught? You say you use mostly tables,
Big
vents
table
above
guy.
your head. You're walking, and all of a sudden, just it pops down, and you're like insta dead.
Yeah,
That
I
bothers
had that
me.
happen early on, and I couldn't tell if it was like a scripted sequence or not. It felt like it was kind of, because I feel like the game, there was like a hallway in front of me that had the vent above it and like the juice dripping down, right? And
Mm.
then there was like the door just to the right that had like a working Joe in it. And so I think I could, it seemed like a scripted, because sometimes there are scripted scenarios where an alien is supposed to pop out at a given time. Usually I think earlier on, but then there are other times where it is like not random, but it's just being fed that kind of information of what it knows from you in the past to try and hunt
Hmm.
you. And so it's kind of hard to tell by the end of the game like what was a scripted scenario, other than like if it popped a cutscene, of course. But yeah, I definitely had that sequence where I saw the juice, and I think I even saw him go in there. And I was like, I'll probably be safe here, but no, he got me big time. I think even
That's
the
funny.
first time I saw him, I was like running for one of the tram station doors, and I couldn't see him, but I could hear him chasing behind me, and that, I mean, it's terrifying for sure, because in that moment when he was behind me, my character just looks down and like the claw or the tail is like through my chest right in front of me there.
Oh
So
yeah, yeah.
yeah, the scare factor of the alien was 10 out of 10, and I think the only time it really dropped below that were some of these situations where early on in the game I was playing on, I forget what the difficulty was called, but it's the one that's like, this is the intended experience, intended difficulty. So I was like, okay, well, I'll start on that one. And then I just found with the lack of checkpoints and some of how smart this alien is, it was getting a bit frustrating. Because I also found too, like if I'm in a sequence, and let's say it's a long sequence where I'm hiding for minutes at a time, sometimes under one desk for like 5 minutes, waiting for this guy to move slowly back and forth. Eventually, okay, I'm going to creep around the corner. I think I have a bit of space. If I'm doing that and I've been alive for like 20, 25 minutes trying to get through this one sequence to just like hit some dial on the other side of this area, and then I die, to me, it takes all of the tension out of that whole sequence when I have to do it again. And so I feel like that's like the perfect, it's almost like surfing or something. Like that's like the perfect balance that a horror game needs, is like to keep you right on the edge the whole time, but for the bad guy to never actually kill you, but to always just feel like you're about to die. Mm-hmm. And I just feel like sometimes this game was a bit too hard for me, and that's where I dropped it down on the difficulty scale, and that's where it was a bit more, it was still very intense, but it was just way less annoying having to redo sequences, I guess, because sometimes just with how slow you're crawling, and it feels like the only way to get through a scenario is to like slowly crawl under a desk, wait for 5 minutes for him to walk away, go under another desk, wait another 5 minutes. It's like that kind of thing becomes annoying when you don't have a quick save button and you just have to rely on the save machines. I don't know. Have you kind of found that in your time at all, or am I kind of on my own?
No, I've found that a few times, and I completely agree. I think that when you're trying to get from point A to point B and then get back, like it's so aggravating when there's no proper pattern like other games and bosses have. And so all you're really doing is, if you try to get to your destination, you die, and you do it again. Well, the scenario is completely different, and you could spend it maybe not as long, maybe longer. And that's what really is annoying, I would say. And I can appreciate the fact that if you go back into it and you're trying to do it again, the situation has completely changed. It's not the same as before, and that stress factor comes back. But I don't like the idea that it is just 25 minutes goes by and then your last save is at one of those consoles, which I think it's a very clever way of implementing like a save feature. I think it could be a little more refined, but just the concept, just going up to this key card thing and like punching out, and that's your save. I just like how that is.
I love that idea because it's contextualized within the world, which I always like when things like that are happening. One thing I love in general about this game is like there's very little UI. Like obviously you can pull up like your equipment thing, or you can pull up your map in your menu, but other than that, it's just your health bar at the bottom. Like that's pretty much it. And so I like that it's pretty minimalist. I actually tried to go and turn that off even because I just wanted it it's such a beautiful game. I just wanted an empty screen. Like I do that usually when I'm playing like Dishonored or other immersive games like this. Apparently Nightmare difficulty does remove all of that UI stuff completely, so it's weird that there isn't an option to just manually turn off the health bar visual, because like you don't really need it. Like usually you're dead or alive. Like it doesn't matter if you have half health or not. But yeah, I agree with you. I think the save machines are really great visually, and I love that they have like a 5-second delay for all the times that I wish this game was quicker, or taking less time out of the day just to do a basic thing. I love that takes like 3 to 5 seconds, wait for those lights to click down before it officially saves, because that feeling of tension is often there, and it means that you can't just like run up to a save station, quickly cheese it if an alien's in the room. If he'll kill you in that amount of time. And I love that it has the little warning there too of like hostiles nearby. I was like, you know what? I don't even care. Most of the time, I'm just going to go for it anyway. Even if I've made a bad save point here, it never bit me in the butt, thankfully. But I could see a scenario where you saved at the wrong time, where every time you would load back in, there would be a guy like right behind you or something like that. But I got pretty lucky in that way.
There's a few situations where it would be reloading back in, and I just get so frustrated. Like, okay, well, you know what? I know where the alien is in this situation, so I'm just not going to run, but I'm going to just walk straight to where I got to go, and just kind of like, unfortunately, I guess not fortunately, unfortunately, because I'm not indulging in how the game is supposed to be played because I'm getting frustrated, but I still got to enjoy it the first time until I died, and the second time until I died. And so now it's just like, okay, I'm just gonna like cut and run, or cut and fast walk to where I gotta go. And it sucks that the game kind of can push you to that point. It shouldn't have to. It should be able to be replayable and still enjoyable.
Yeah, one thing I didn't realize really until like very late in the playthrough, and then when I was watching some YouTube videos that confirmed it, is that in most games like this, if you want to be completely silent as you move, you gotta crawl or crouch, whatever. But in this game, like walking is completely quiet as far as I can tell. It doesn't make any more
Oh yeah.
noise than crouching. It's just if you're sprinting or throwing equipment, shooting bullets. Obviously, those things all make sound. But like sprinting is the obvious thing. But like truly, that can be the difference sometimes. Is just walking from one like hiding area to a next rather than just relying on that crouch. So that was something that took me a while to realize because I'm just so conditioned by like every other survival horror game like this. Like the crouch is the only reliable way to be like 100% quiet. So that was something I had to learn too. And I'm sure that would have helped me a lot in some of those sequences when I was really tight on timing, but it's because I was literally for the first 5 or 6 hours of this game, I was probably crouched 90% of that because I was so terrified. Even like before the xenomorph was introduced, I was still just so terrified knowing that it's out there somewhere,
Yeah. The there's moments where you think you're clear and you will be crouching and you're going out into the hallway. And this is something that bothers me because if that alien is super far away, uh doesn't see you, but you see him, and then I think, okay, well now I gotta crouch back. You can't even walk. I mean, if that alien decides to do his little fast walk spur thing, he's got you. And that really bothers me because you could be in a hallway where there's no accessible hiding spot nearby and you just got to crouch because you hope he doesn't hear you. But he does his fast walk. He hasn't seen you, but he does his fast walk down the hallway and then he just happens to see you and then you're dead. Like it's tricky.
Yeah. I've yeah, I don't know. I found if I was ever caught by the alien, like visually spotted, and I didn't flamethrower him, I was dead. That was the only possible way. I'm trying to think if I even ever ran to a elevator when he was after me and was able to hit the button. Other than like, I think there's like a scripted sequence or two that have a situation like that.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, but like otherwise, yeah. If I was spotted, I was dead for sure. So I don't know. I never got to a sequence where I was like able to run away into a room. Like maybe I made a sound and he started to come from me, but like he never actually spotted me. But I found like if I was visually spotted, I was dead. Is that what you're saying though? Like like walking, you're more visible than crouching, I guess. Would that be maybe a difference between those two then?
Well, not even being spotted because like you're moving down the corridor and all of a sudden you just see him down the ways, down the corridor, or you poke around the corner and he's down there, but he doesn't see you. So you do a U-turn, you're going back and you're crouching or you're walking. You're not making sound is the main thing is you're trying to get to a hiding spot because you got to go down this corridor and he's blocking it.
Yes, right.
But he does his fast walk and just walks up to you, but he doesn't know you're there. He's just doing his random fast walk thing, but then he sees you and then you try to run, but he's going to get you. So there's that.
Yeah. Yeah, that'll happen. Let's talk about like a little more of because you're talking about the save stations there, which are cool. I think in general, like the tech in this game, I love it visually because it's very much set in that all the alien tech in general is like very bulky tech, very old school, very like what the 70s thought the future would look like. But I feel like this game, since there's so many more tools that you're using, I feel like the like visual style of it is like really really interesting. I love the motion tracker, which I had in my hands so much of this game, because that's like all the only way you can truly know what's around the next corner. But even just like the computers, the terminals, like scrolling through them, the different buttons, I really enjoyed that stuff. It was like very tactile. The torch that you're using, the different the like wrench that you're using to crack those like locks off the door, and then even just down to like all of the equipment that you're using, just like the visual design of it. I thought all of that stuff was like absolutely perfect and so cool, and both like really cool and compact, but also like bulky and clunky at the same time. It has that like threads the perfect needle on that.
I think that they've been able to really examine the tech that existed in I guess Alien 1 and Alien specifically, while obviously the other films are around at this point. I'm glad that they didn't really focus on all that other stuff. They just kept it pretty simple. And there's just something settling, I guess, about seeing this advanced technology, but it's like a few decades old at the same time and how it appears. And I can really, I don't know, it's comforting. I like looking at it and utilizing that tech. It's nice. And I can just appreciate the attention to detail because when you're walking into certain rooms, like you got the what was it, the room where you're talking to Mother in Alien? They got the same thing here.
Yep.
Like that room is super cool. Yeah, using every one of like the Sevastopol U-Link stations is always cool. Going through the different
Yes.
messages. There's just so many neat little things.
Yeah, I thought it was even a great touch that the computers, the terminals on Sevastopol are slightly different, at least visually, from like what is the name? What is the name of that derelict ship that you go on to with Marlowe and Taylor, the other Taylor, Alien Isolation Taylor? I forget the name of it. It's like I probably wrote it down somewhere in my notes here. But you have to go to that derelict ship, and the
Hmm.
terminals on there have like different loading screens because they're a different brand of computer, right, or a different operating software because they're not from that. They're not part of Sevastopol, the Sevastolink thing. So I thought it was just like that attention to detail too. I probably wouldn't have caught if they had just used the same terminals, but the fact that they did something different did stand out to me. It was a good like little detail there that they
Hmm.
decided to do something like that. I also think too like the hacker that you have. You're doing all sorts of hacking in this game, and I like that there's like 5 or 6 different hacking micro game mini games that you're doing just to like mix it up, and all of them are pretty simple. I like that not a single one of them is tutorialized, and so the first time you see any particular one, it's like, what am I supposed to do here? But then you eventually just kind of figure it out intuitively. I thought that was really like, well
Hmm.
designed, and I like that there's just enough variety there for it to work, even though this game is quite long. You're seeing a lot of these things, but it was cool.
The hacking one where you have you have to pick where you put the corner around the square of the screen, and then you got to pick the
Yes.
3 symbols. When there's enemies nearby, it is the most stressful
Mm-hmm.
freaking thing
Yep.
to do. Oh gosh.
Yeah, this is definitely a game where I feel like even in BioShock, if you're hacking, maybe it would like pause the world around you, while you're like in that
Hmm.
mini game, but not here. Everything is still happening in real time. Even when you're like crafting and stuff, it's like one of the tool tips that'll pop up is if you want to do some crafting, go find a quiet corner to do it there too. I like the crafting in this game. It's very simple. It's really just like there's like 7 or 8 materials that you're collecting through the space station, and you just got to kind of click them into place. But one thing I really liked about it is that once you have to fill in like maybe five pieces, hit craft. But even if let's say you have the maximum amount, you can still fill in all those things. You can like preload them in, and that way it's like it almost gives you like bonus inventory space, so that when you have used your other ones, you can rebuild that next one with like the materials that you've already preloaded in there. I thought it was a pretty cool idea. So I don't know. I like the crafting. That's not really a mini game, but I like that system. I think it worked well, even if once again I was not using a lot of things that I was crafting. I pretty much always had. I don't know if I ever threw a Molotov cocktail in this game. I always just had the maximum amount in my inventory.
Hmm.
I was using the EMP blast to slow
MP
down
blast.
if I was ever too many working Joes around me here. That was kind of my go-to technique. But yeah, I don't think I threw a noisemaker either, to be honest.
Hmm.
So I definitely cheaped out on some of those resources, but
Hmm.
that was cool. I don't know about you, Taylor, but I think maybe the scariest thing for me in this game was fucking doors and vents auto opening. And just that sound effect that plays whenever you get like somewhat near a door and it like begins to auto open, it jump scared me so many times because I was always crouching, being super slow. There's no sounds, no music going on, and then just like a huge blast noise as a door is opening in front of me. Because you never know, like maybe there's an alien on the other side of that. Did I get close
Hmm.
enough to open it, or is there a guy, a working Joe, an alien, whatever it is, coming in through that door on the other side?
Hmm. Yeah, no, I think the vents are very, very freaky, and I love how too it's just like the Nostromo's vents from the movie, just how it's like
Mm-hmm.
opens up,
Yep.
and yeah, those are tricky, and the fact that they blended into the walls, you can just walk by them, don't even know that they're there, and
Mm-hmm.
half the time with some vents, I just overlook them where the alien can come through. I've spent so much time in this one room doing something, and I can see my tracker. You can hear the alien bump around the vents, but he doesn't
Yeah, that's a
always
cruel
come.
thing that on the
It is
tracker they're
cruel.
still visible even if they're not actually physically in the space, but in like the imaginary vent space.
Yes, exactly. And they may not even be a part of this mission. They may not even
Yeah.
appear, but they're always just lurking around. So I thought that was just the case here, and I was just doing what I was doing, and gonna get to the next area where these synthetics were. And so I leave my room and go into the other room, and while I'm in the other room, you just hear that dun or that like thud, and then like that hissing, and I
Yeah.
turn around like holy shit, like I didn't know that he could come into that room from the ceiling. So you hide
Mm,
and whatnot. So I can appreciate all the different spots that they've placed vents, access
yeah.
points, and stuff.
Can the aliens go through the? Because obviously they're like vertical vents in the roof, and you can't
hmm
go in those vents. But can they go through like those circular door vents that you crawl around in?
I mean, I've
Like if you go into
encountered.
one, do they chase you? Like what I never actually had that scenario pop up. I thought they could go through those ones when I
I'm pretty
watched
sure
Briggs play, but I might have made that up.
I'm pretty sure I've encountered one in there before, and I had to flame him out of my my way.
Okay.
Um, yeah,
Interesting. Yeah. I never quite encountered that.
there's certain ones that I don't think they can go in. Obviously, it's for like story reasons. You're not gonna encounter one in this certain area. If you're going down a ladder and then you're in a tight little like ventilation system and up another ladder through the floor or whatnot. But I think those ones with the the specifically the circular ones that open up,
Mm-hmm.
I'm pretty sure the alien can get in there.
Right. Cool. Okay, let's take our first break here. We're going to go into those circular vents. We'll be right back after this break. Okay, we are back. Taylor, do you want to talk more gameplay now? Do you want to jump into story? Do you want to talk? Where do you want to go next?
I'd love to get into some story.
Okay, let's do it. So, this game, I guess, takes place in between. Would it be between Alien and Aliens, or between
Yes.
Aliens and 3? It would be between those two,
One
right?
and two, yeah.
Yeah. And so the story here, you play as Amanda Ripley, the daughter of Ellen Ripley. You are an engineer on a ship that is going to retrieve they call it a black box, which has some information from the Nostromo about pretty much just what happened. That's where you're going, and that black box is there at Sevastopol. You get invited along to go to Sevastopol, and then as you're going there, you realize that shit has gone down at Sevastopol. This place is not in good shape, and that's what leads into the whole setting of the game. So yeah, what did you think about I guess playing as this character, kind of that being the choice, the setup for the story, and I don't know, what do you think about this location in general of Sevastopol being the kind of setting here?
I love it. I really, really do. I love how big the space station is, and I love
It's
how
freaking
nowhere is
huge.
it's huge. Nowhere is really safe, and it just feels like it's a space city essentially.
Yeah, any space station that needs a tram system to get around, is pretty freaking huge.
Yeah. Yeah, and even though it is so huge, the fact that it gets in the name, you feel isolated, you feel
Mm-hmm.
confined, and I really like that. It takes some of the best parts of Alien and just throws it in here. And I think that's again why I'm looking forward to Romulus, because Romulus feels like it's got this kind of similar situation where you're this person's going to the space station and it's not good on the space station. And to pull Amanda Ripley as a character, I think that's great. It's something that is new. People are unfamiliar with this character, but the character has major ties to our former character that everyone loves and has followed along. So that's great. Keeps the fans and the community kind of attached and have some stake in it. So I can appreciate that. And yeah, I just love how she's called upon just to go and like get some information from her mom and then the Nostromo. I think that's awesome because no one knows what happened to this ship in the 57 years, I think it is. That's a lot of time to play with.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm glad that they did. And I think it's cool that they took advantage of going to like LV-426. That was a big surprise when I was playing the game. I did not think that was going
Right.
to happen. I thought we're just getting an alien on a ship and we're just going to be
Mm-hmm.
trying to evade and survive, and that's all it's going to be. But that definitely was a big surprise. Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. I don't know who it would be like on the rights holder side of it, people who like own the IP for this, whose decision would it be to say here we're gonna give like because I guess this game is canon, right? I don't know if that's really been established by like the studios. Like
You could canon it. I mean, there's
to me,
nothing that
there's nothing that would
counteracts it.
yeah, there's nothing that would make me feel like it's not canon. It's not like any of
hmm
these like all of the characters here are new for this, and there's obviously mentions of Wayland Utani as there always is in these things. But yeah, like to me, it totally feels like a canon experience, and just going through here too. Like when they were making this game, they were given just huge hard drives full of terabytes of information that had like original concept art and footage information about everything, like creation of like all those other movies. So they had so much to work with there. And so, but I wonder going into this if it was like the studio pitching, like here's the setting we want to go, time era, or if it was like the rights holder of like here's where you should maybe go. That here's like a good spot to be. in the kind of way like Star Wars has like that period where they're just like, oh yeah, we'll just put all our shows and movies in that kind of dark period between these movies, right? So I think it's an interesting choice, but I think it's cool to play as Amanda Ripley in here. I guess it's maybe jumping to the end a little bit, but it's a little weird the way it's left off. Maybe we'll save that for later in terms of like what could have been for a sequel or what could be. It's never too late, you know? Seems like they've gone on to make other things, but
I really appreciate that they got Sigourney Weaver to come back actually and voice her lines for this
I couldn't
game.
tell if it was actually her, honestly.
Yeah,
but that's good to know.
She did the DLC stuff, and then
Okay.
the whole voice message like to Amanda. That was that's fantastic.
Yeah. But yeah, I think Sevastopol is a really fun location. It's something different too. Like we've had various ground locations. We've had a lot of space ships, but to have like just a massive space station like this is kind of a new, unique thing. And I think it makes sense for a video game where you're going to be spending a lot more time here and you kind of need larger areas to go through. And I think it is cool that you are doing a lot of backtracking through areas over and over again. So it feels like you're kind of, I don't know, you're seeing locations at different points in time, especially at the end. You're going through some areas that you were at near the start of the game and just seeing them kind of like burning down, like just deteriorating as the events of the game have been going on is pretty cool. But I think maybe the most interesting part for me about the space station is that it's like a different company that created and owned the ship, because we're so used to like a lot of our stuff being, oh yeah, this is like a Weyland-Yutani piece, or it's, you know, a sponsored project being sent out by Weyland-Yutani. So it's always geared with that tech or the Weyland-Yutani androids. So I think it's especially cool that this ship is owned by Seegson, is that company. And so that's where you get like, it explains why their tech can look different than some of the stuff in the movies, while still, of course, being inspired and having that same era, generally speaking, but in terms of like the user interface or the existence of the working Joes and being such a different type of android than we're used to, where in the movies it's always like, we're trying to make these things as lifelike as possible, and then maybe even like by covenant, like, okay, we made them too lifelike, let's go back and make them unlifelike again, as like take away some of that free will. You know, that's a big part of that movie, and how that's always like a thing in the movies is like, ooh, that character, it's like a huge reveal when someone, you find out that they're an android for the first time. But in here it's like obvious because they just look freaky. They look like they're not intentionally trying to hide that they are humans. They all look, you know, the same as well. They have kind of the creepy eyes that blare through in the dark rooms that you're going through. And they're just a lot more of like, they feel like a Roomba, you know, like a really complex Roomba. Like they're just going around doing basic tasks. They have their pre-programmed lines that don't sound very human-like. They sound like they're generated by a computer and all that. But yeah, just across the board, seeing like the different tech and like a company that is a competitor Weyland-Yutani, but is clearly not nearly as successful, because obviously that's like the biggest megacorp ever, right? And so to have like a ship that's kind of breaking down in certain ways, or is not quite as tight and buttoned up and polished as a Weyland-Yutani one is a really cool direction to go, and I think they completely nailed it in that regard.
Yeah, I always get a kick when Amanda finds out that Weyland-Yutani actually bought this station, like, I think the day before she gets there.
Yeah.
Which this cracks me up. I think that was when she was actually speaking, not to Mother, but the similar equivalent scene, and she's seeing like the protocol, and it's the same thing with Ellen, where it's like, oh yeah, everything comes second, protect the Xeno, all that kind of stuff. Everything else is,
it's pretty by the books alien stuff. It's really the same story that we've seen many a times over, because of that element of it. Yeah. But, you know, I think that was a cool twist as well. That, yeah, as you mentioned, like the current state of the ship is that it was being decommissioned. It was going to be torn apart. And that's where, like, it kind of explains why there's a lot of doors and things that aren't really operational when you're playing the game already. Like, there's certain sections you can't go into, but it makes sense because, like, okay, those areas have already been kind of checked off the list, so to speak. They've been closed down. They're done. And it's kind of just the ship, the shuttle kind of slowly being shut down piece by piece. And that's kind of the state you're in, even if Weyland-Yutani just purchased it. But they don't really care about maintaining it or bringing it back to its former glory. They're just there strictly to get that xenomorph goodness. They just want to get that tech down so they can do whatever they want to do with it. So I think that's a really cool time period, too. And that helps it make it feel like a more real place. It makes it feel more immersive because it kind of has this history to it, between like these two companies owning it too. It's kind of an interesting angle to go for. Because I can't really recall other companies that you see. There's always like they just refer to it as the company, right? A lot in the Alien franchise.
Yes.
So it's cool to just see what a competitor's like. And yeah, what'd you think about the Working Joes? You had an interesting comment about that earlier, so I'm curious what you think about them, just kind of relative to the androids we're used to.
Yeah, I mean, I'm glad that they make them look the way they are. I think it's fitting because it helps you because you're crafting things, you have different weaponry, and you need to know the situation. You need to know what you have to use on what things. In this case, yeah, stun batons are really handy. But yeah, there's certain situations where it's really stressful, but I don't find them to be as stressful as aliens. These things are much more pattern based, so you can definitely map yourself out when you're trying to maneuver around them. So I can appreciate that. Um, yeah, and I don't think I've had a situation yet where like I've had the alien and the synthetics kind of meet hand in hand. Have you?
I think the alien ignores them.
Mm-hmm.
I think I guess they kind of ignore each other, so to speak, because at that point, especially when the robots kind of go rogue and they're trying to hunt you down and just kill. I also can't think of a time when a robot is directly trying to kill another human. I guess there's at one point when like, because
What's the character's name? Because he like beats the
Samuel's,
shit out
right?
of he beats the shit out of it, right?
He's the other android, so but that android isn't even trying to kill him. I think so. I don't know if they're just I don't know. I'm guessing they're programmed to kill everyone or take anyone out, but specifically your character is on that list in terms of being a target for them. But yeah, I can't recall a room that has both the synthetics and the aliens. They're kind of used in different sequences, like the robots
Mhm.
early on before they go rogue, but then kind of before you're introduced to the xenomorph. And then the biggest sequence when you're going against them is in that sequence when you've jettisoned the one xenomorph off
Mhm.
the station, which is kind of a weird sequence because like for that next 2 hours, even though you are fighting robots, I found like there was almost no tension in the game at that point, and I was just like, oh, okay, I
Did you
know
think
he's
you
gonna
beat
come
the
back.
alien? Oh, you
What's that?
thought he was gonna come back.
Oh, I'm like, I know this game is 20 hours long, and I know I'm 10 hours in. I know there's zero chance that I've just defeated the alien, so of course he's gonna come back. So that's where it just felt like, okay, I have to go like 2 hours now of just like mess around fighting these robots. Which there was some interesting stealth kind of challenges there. I think it was a bit different in terms of like, they can have more of a classic video game stealth sequence. Like they have a destination. They walk from this machine, they stand there for 5 seconds, they turn around, they walk to that machine, and like it has those video game paths, the pathing. Whereas the xenomorph is much more unpredictable with his movements. But I found that sequence to be like, okay, I know what we're doing here, I get it, but like this, there's no surprise here. There's obviously
Mhm.
no chance that the xenomorph's obviously completely gone. And I mean, that one is gone and doesn't come back. But then you just find out there are potentially hundreds more lying below.
Whole lot of them. Yeah, which
Yeah, go ahead.
sorry, I was just gonna say, the few missions like before you jettison him, I don't know if many people catch on to it, but you'll start to find bodies that are all been like chest bursters. Their chests are all popped, and it's like,
Right.
well, I know there's more than one alien here, so that it kind of derails it from when you eject the one to thinking like, okay, well, I did it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but yeah, that's an interesting way that they connect this to the original movie. As you mentioned, that sequence with Marlowe. Marlowe's a guy who came from that. I wish I had the name of that other ship. I know I wrote it down somewhere. Oh, the Anisadora. I did write it down. That's the other ship that had gone down to. Give me the name of the planet again for me.
LV-426.
Yeah, they went down there because they found the distress signal that was being given off. Marlowe is the one, I believe, that turns off the distress signal. And as they're going through there, one of the crew members of the Anisadora gets hit by a face hugger. And so it's really cool to play through that sequence on that planet. And that feels like a bit of a retread of like, okay, we're doing a sequence from the first movie, which is funny that they did it there in a bit of a different way, and then like the DLC is literally just replaying a section from that first movie. But I thought that was a really, really cool sequence, other than like, okay, this spacesuit, whenever you're in this thing, you're so freaking slow and it takes a long time. But the atmosphere was so strong there, like really strong gusts of winds you can barely see, and then like you'll get to certain sequences when it's like sets up like a very interesting visual, and then you're like going into the dungeon, so to speak, from the first movie. And so that's how the alien gets brought back to the space station. So it's cool that they're kind of following in the same footsteps of what is set up from that first movie. And maybe that would be like the only explanation of how like this alien kind of spread again through this space station. So I think that was a really cool way to connect it. I think that really worked for me. The Anisadora part, the bridge, I guess.
Yeah, I everything about that was fantastic. I was head over heels when we're going LV-426, see the derelict ship, and even just the little nods like, oh, it looks like someone was dragged here, these tracks. Oh, we're not the first ones here.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, the Nostromo was here, but they didn't report it. And like, okay, well, they wiped the beacon so that they can kind of claim it, but then them wiping the beacon, well, no one else is going to find it. And it makes sense. They're taking advantage of something that was pre-existing in Aliens, where in the first Alien movie you have the Nostromo detecting the signal and going down there to check it out. But in Aliens, you have the colonists on the planet. The colonists never went to go check out this beacon or even go there. They weren't going to that location until they were directed there by the company, and that's
Right.
something that's not in a deleted scene. That's in the main movie. So now it makes sense. None of the colonists knew that it was there because you have this crew going in and they deactivated the beacon.
Right.
So it's fun that they've been able to actually build upon that as pre-established lore with this universe. So I can appreciate that. But yeah, once you are going down that rappel and you just get that like panoramic shot, it's like, holy crap. And it looks so cool. But yeah, you see your team just like walking in through the eggs, and it's just like, oh god. And yeah, there's just that classic like idiot mentality. The egg opens up and they're like sticking their heads right in there pretty much. Like, geez.
Yeah, especially when they know that like something bad happened here already, or something unsure, something mysterious. Yeah, Marlowe's an interesting character. Him along with everyone else, like no one's really in this game a lot other than like obviously the character you play as. It's just like you'll get introduced to character, like, you know, you have your team at the start of the game, and then you very quickly get displaced from them, and then you'll find them again, but then it's like, okay, I got to go do the next task, so I leave them behind. And so you end up spending like, I don't know, less than a half an hour with them across the whole game. It feels like they don't have a whole lot of spoken lines, especially when the girl that you're with, Taylor, is like knocked out for half the game too, so you don't really get to interact with her a whole lot. But Marlowe, I think it's cool. It's fun that he is trying his hardest to prevent the spread of this thing and from Weyland-Yutani getting any of that information.
He's got the Ellen Ripley mentality.
Yeah, absolutely. I do think that like his ending sequence where he's like, oh, they already took my wife, I don't care. It's like a bit of like, oh, okay, you're just trying to get me to like care for this guy a little bit more, and then he gets knocked out, and that's like the end of his story. It doesn't really stick to landing, but honestly, I don't think there's really any characters that are very successful in this game for me. Even like Amanda, like there's not much to her. It's nice when she gets the moment where she actually gets to hear the message from her mom, but I'm not totally in love with that character after playing this game. She doesn't really have a ton of voice acting, even though she is the protagonist of the game. Like most of the time, it's like maybe she's talking on a radio with someone, but even then, that's like very few sections of the game where you're actually patched in with someone over the radio, or maybe you are, but they're not like actively having conversations. It's more just like, okay, Samuels, where do I go now? Oh, there should be a red button with like a blue wire. You gotta touch that, and it's like very like factual. Like, here's what we're gonna do here. But yeah, what did you think about the other characters? So you have Samuels and Taylor, who are the two that you go on the ship with. Samuels being the android. I forget what Taylor's role is. Like, is she a medical person? I don't think. Maybe she is, because I remember she gets like injured, and then it's like, well,
you
gotta
go
medical
go
people.
find the you gotta go find like the
I forget
med
what
kit
her
for...
role was on the ship, and then you're counting a couple other people, but I don't know. There was no really powerful characters in here for me.
No, yeah, I don't remember much with Taylor aside from her and Marlowe, and then Taylor like freaking out and trying to like stop Marlowe's self-destruction thing going on, and then she just gets struck by a lightning bolt, and that's a game over for her. So yeah, they kind of execute them pretty quickly. I can't remember the name of the other woman who's she's near the end.
Oh
and
yeah,
she gets killed.
She's
off
like helping
screen
you.
by
She's
the
like on the
Xeno.
ship, and she's coordinating with you to open up the bridge, whatever it is.
Yeah, she
I
gets
didn't write her
killed off
name
screen
down,
by
but-
the Xeno.
Yeah. Similar thing happens to Ricardo, who's another guy who you kind of encounter when you kind of get like a party together halfway through the game, when you've reconnected with Samuels and Taylor. She's still knocked out, but you've connected with like, I think one of the security officers, and then there's other
like the
random
marshal.
NPCs.
Yeah.
The marshal. There's other random NPCs there, and one of them is Ricardo, who's like kind of just a random guy, but then like later on in the game, everyone's killed except for him, or they're gone. Well, they are killed. You just don't really know. specifically. Some of them you do know. And then he's on the radio with you a lot, helping you through different sequences. And then he also gets killed off screen too by a face hugger. Takes him out at some point too. So I don't know. I didn't really care a whole lot like any particular person was taken out, with the exception of maybe Samuels. I think he was the most interesting. He probably had the most dialogue too. I like the idea of what he was doing there too, of how he was trying to alter something, because obviously he's an android. He was trying to go into some machine and like alter his something or rather. I don't know what the science is behind it, so that he could communicate with Apollo, who's the core of the ship that runs the system, and therefore could kind of deactivate the working Joes from their aggressive state that they're in. But then when he was in that machine, it just did not work at all, and ended up just killing him right then and there. So he had a very unfortunate death as well. But I think he was probably the most, I don't know, top dog, I guess, most interesting character out of the rest of the crew.
It's got a Alien Resurrection vibe, sort of, when you have I can't remember her name.
Winona's character.
Thank you. Yes, that's synthetic, and she basically connected to the ship and was able to have the ship like change its algorithms, like change up like lock doors, trap the guy, and all that kind of stuff. Which her case is much more successful than his.
Yeah, I thought that was an interesting part when one of the missions in the game, you're going down to the Apollo core, which is like the brain of the space station, and just compared to like, I'm sure within like one of those space ships that we're in like one of the movies, that core is, it's a pretty small room to get the job done, but here it's like this huge thing, and it like wobbles around, and it's like all these layers of security, which makes sense because it's such a huge space station. And that's where some of those reveals happen. I believe that's when the Weyland-Yutani, well, there's terminals that will say like, oh, Weyland-Yutani bought the ship, people are talking about it, but that's when you get to punch in your questions, whatever. I mean, it's a cutscene, but still, that's when you're finding out more. And you get some of those plot twists kind of happening there too when you're trying to deactivate the working Joes, which of course you don't end up doing there too. So that was an interesting sequence as well.
Yeah.
Let's see, other story stuff. So I guess you mentioned this too, where at some point on the Anisadora, on that ship, that one lady got face hugged, got impregnated, and then she comes back to the ship. Presumably that from there is what spreads to everyone else on Sevastopol. And as you were talking about, eventually you go down to that sequence. I think it's right after the Apollo sequence, actually. Good timing on that. When you go beneath Apollo down that big ladder, and that's when you see, oh shit, there is a huge encampment of just alien eggs everywhere. The walls are all filled out with the nasty goo stuff. And as you mentioned, you never actually see the queen, but we have to assume there is a queen somewhere on this space station. That sequence is really difficult, really freaky as well. Every corner, every sound, your motion tracker is near useless because it's just giving you random pings all over the place. There's people like, glued into the walls, and you can still loot them, which I find a bit dark. You can be like, oh, I'll take that revolver ammo off this guy's corpse who's stuck to the wall here. That sequence is really hard because that's also when I think the first time you're encountering multiple xenomorphs at the same time. On top of that, there's face huggers in there, and you have to do a lot of stuff. You got to hit a lot of computers, hit a lot of switches, and so you have tasks on top of just trying to evade these things. So I found that sequence to be really difficult, but it was also, of course, really cool because it's just something different, and it's. I guess I hadn't really thought about it too much because to that point, I assume you're fighting multiple xenomorphs, but it could be that it's just one xenomorph on the ship, right?
Totally.
Yeah, it kind of tricks you. I think it's a really, really good sequence.
Yeah, when you see all the eggs, and you have to think, okay, so what is the setup here? Now, some people have hypothesized that maybe they're just pulling off. Remember the deleted scene in the first Alien where Xeno takes a body, turns the body into an egg, and then the egg is a face hugger. Yeah. People have thought maybe that's the case, and then other people are thinking no. And I think the majority of people believe that it was a queen. And there might even been some talk about that from the devs where they didn't want to include a queen and make it feel like there was going to be a boss fight. But the notion of there being a queen, it is a queen somewhere on the station.
Yeah, I can respect their kind of holding back there and not hitting like every trope or everything that's been done before in an Alien movie. And I guess just like not doing that thing isn't a whole lot different. But I don't know. For me, it's like totally fine. Like just because of how it's established how big this space station is, right? If it was once again a spaceship from one of the movies, where it's like I don't know, even the Prometheus ship, pretty freaking huge ship, you know. But I don't think I'd believe that if you played through a Prometheus game and you were just on this one ship the whole time, that you wouldn't bump into the Queen at some point just because of the size of it. But based on how big this thing is, I guess you could say too, like you spend a lot of time down in that reactor core area, and that's presumably where the Queen would be. So maybe you should bump into her because you did. I don't know. You were in that sequence of it, but I don't know. I guess I would subscribe to the theory that there is a queen somewhere and you just don't see her. But that is another good, interesting theory too. But I guess, is there any other alien material that leads us to believe that that's possible? Because that is, of course, as you mentioned, like a deleted scene from the first one.
Yes.
What do you believe is true? Do you believe that's possible without a queen for these things to spread to that, vast amount of numbers?
On my last note on the Queen, some people have said that when you are overloading the cores on the Hive, that you can actually hear Queen sounds, just audio cues of like Queen screeches, which the Queen does have a very significant and like recognizable tone. So it's up to interpretation. But now, if you're talking about other ways that we could get a Queen on here, if we're not going the Predalien route, the hybrid, and we're talking just alien, in the 2010 Alien versus Predator game, there was a xenomorph that, classic, just chestburster, regular alien, and the Queen was eliminated, and so the Hive always needs a Queen, the Dutchman must have a captain kind of a thing.
Yeah.
So the alien, Weyland Yutani captures the alien because the alien was running around as the alien's name was Six, and then it starts to trip out when the Queen dies, and it starts to like seize up on the ground, and so Weyland Yutani captures it, and then this is the alien entering its next life cycle stage to become a new queen, and so
okay, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. So there's many different
I assume that's
ways.
what bees do as well, but I've just totally made that up. But I feel like that's what they would do too.
Yeah, I don't think that's the case. If the queen dies, then I think the bees follow suit shortly after. I think that the queen bee lays a specific replacement.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes they can even like fight each other for dominance too. That's a whole other can of worms.
It's like, yeah, it's different anatomy on like, it's not just like one gets a crown on its head and it's declared queen. Like it has different capabilities, right? So, but that would make sense because considering how quickly these things go from like a chest burster to a full-grown xenomorph, like they grow quickly, and a lot of the time, like when they're killing people that we see in the movies, it's not like they're eating all of that people to get like matter in their body, so they have stuff to grow from, like nutrients. Like they're just killing people because they want to more so, and they can just naturally grow on their own. So it wouldn't surprise me if one can go from the face hugger size to a xenomorph size in like, I don't know, a few hours. It wouldn't surprise me that in a few hours or I don't know, a couple days even, which timeline would work here for the Sevastopol stuff, to go from like a regular xenomorph size to a queen size.
There's again, there's so many of the books I haven't read, and we haven't seen Praetorian aliens in any of the live action, at least to my knowledge, but they've been featured in Alien versus Predator 2010, and then Aliens Colonial Marines. I think Fireteam Elite as well. So it's a type of alien that's existed for a while. They're like the royal guards of the aliens, and so I think the kind of thought is that some xenomorphs that are born are part of a caste system, so they have that DNA entered in them for them to become like the queen or evolve into like the next.
Yeah, any
the next
moment
stage.
they can just flip that switch essentially, or get
I
it
guess
flipped
so.
and
Yeah,
then go.
when needed. Yeah.
Interesting. Let's see. I'm trying to think about other story stuff that happens here. So I guess. Well, go ahead. You had something.
I was just gonna say, like, it freaked me out when Amanda got like strung up onto like the Xeno wall. I thought like, oh, is she impregnated? Like, that's not where you want to be. You don't want to be unconscious and wake up in the wall because that's
not
risky.
Surrounded by eggs and creepy noises and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, jumping kind of towards the end. Well, actually, one more thing since we were just talking about like the reactor core in that area. I think that is visually one of the most fascinating areas in here because you go down to the reactor core. It's like you have to go down and down and down through all these different levels, and then it's just like this huge empty space where it's not outside, but it feels like it obviously you can like breathe down there, so it's obviously inside and has an atmosphere of some sort, but it's like these huge electric machines. And yeah, like I said, it's so big you can't see the walls or anything. And it's just these massive like electric explosions happening, and that's like how it is supposed to function. And then it's like raining in there, so it has like its own atmosphere, and that's like somehow the power system for the whole ship. I don't understand it, but it's so cool, and like that area was just so there's just an epicness to it, a scale that I found really impressive. And yeah, it was terrifying in its own right. And of course, you can't like walk through there without just having to fight 100 working Joes at the same time. So that adds to it. But that area was really cool. I like that area quite a lot.
Raining inside ships is such a neat thing, and it's so
Yeah.
weird to think about because they even had that in the first Alien movie. I can't remember his name, but he's like walking around trying to find the cat, and he takes his hat off because it's like raining in this one part of the ship. Just it's interesting. It's weird,
Yeah.
but cool.
Yeah. So yeah, jumping more towards the end of it, then obviously you're fighting all sorts of aliens, xenomorphs. So at this point, everyone's dead. I guess is safe to say. I'm trying to think of any human being survives in this game that we
I don't
see.
think so. I mean,
don't think so.
the ship alone is destroyed,
Yeah.
and I think everyone with it.
Yeah. So your last task is to go fix up these satellites, adjust these satellites and whatnot in order to be able to escape the ship. And you're outside the ship, and these aliens come after you. You get knocked aboard, and then and then you go back into the ship at some point. And that's when everything's like self-destructing because you've activated that function of the ship. And then it's about a kind of a race to get to the, I guess not the escape pod, but trying to get to that area where you can escape with that lady and the other ship that I can't remember the name of at the end of it there. And then yeah, like the final cutscene in this game is a kind of cliffhangery thing where a xenomorph's got you dead to rights. You're doing like a quick time sequence where you're hitting different buttons, left, right, back. You hit this thing, you escape out. You have your spaceship or your space suit still on, so you can breathe out in the void, of course. Presumably, all the aliens die on the ship as it explodes on the space station, and then like the post-credit kind of thing, or the pre-credit, whatever you want to call it, mid-credit situation is like she's opening her eyes very slowly, and then like a light comes by, presumably a ship that's coming to scoop her up. So I don't know. It's a bit of like sequel bait stuff, but what do you take happen considering that we don't have a follow up, a sequel to this yet, and we don't. I guess I don't know. I'm assuming another game doesn't address what happened to Amanda Ripley. So what do you take this to mean? Do you think she gets saved by someone at the end here, or was she just seeing some other random light?
The only thing I can headcanon it as is the aliens deleted scene where Burke shows a photo to Ellen Ripley and says, yeah, she died as an old lady, yada, yada, yada.
Right.
And that's it. It's the last we ever heard of this character.
Right.
I would love to see some other game released for this. Maybe there's a comic book. Maybe there's actually a novel in regards to this. I am not aware of that, but I would love to see a follow-up. I'm imagining it's Weyland-Yutani that's finally arrived. They bought the station, and they wanted to get there and see what's going on, get their greedy little fingers on the Xenos. They probably just arrived to see their prize get just blown up and find this one lone person floating in space. So that's kind of what I'm thinking.
Yeah, that sounds about right to me. I'm trying to see what else here I have in my notes. One thing that I thought was really interesting early on, but then it was one of those mechanics that, as I mentioned, that didn't really seem to go anywhere, is the idea of like other NPCs in this game, other human characters. We were just talking about the like story relevant ones, and there's actually another guy earlier on. I can't remember his name. Just how long this game is that like I kind of forgot about this earlier sequence where some guy finds you kind of early on, and you're working with him for like a mission or two, and then he eventually gets killed. But I totally forget his name. But he was in an earlier sequence there. But yeah, this is something that was like a part of a tooltip earlier on, and then it was mentioned at some point is like you'll encounter NPCs across your journey, and you just kind of have to, they have it in a more eloquent wording. I can't remember exactly what wording is, but it's essentially like you never know if they're going to be aggressive or if they're going to want to work with you. So you kind of have to approach those sequences pretty lightly, like slowly approach without a gun or something like that, and maybe you can work with them, or maybe they'll just try and kill you on sight. And so I was like, that's an interesting idea throughout this game. I'm going to bump into NPCs, and I'm going to have to gauge based on listening to their conversations, based on like their body, I don't know, their body motions. Are they holding a gun? I'll probably be more scared of them there. And determine like, okay, if they're going to be a friend or foe. but I kind of feel like that never really went anywhere. Of course, there's like sequences where you're teaming up with your friends again, and so that makes sense. But whenever you're like, you'll meet NPCs that are with those friends, and I was a little disappointed that you can never really talk to those people. Like they'll be in a room, but you can't like hit E to talk and have a conversation with them or learn anything from them. And so it kind of made them like, I want to know their story. I want to know who they are, why they're here, how they survived, if they have any tips or tricks for me, that kind of thing. And then I kind of just found like every other NPC in the game was instantly hostile, and there was really nothing I could do about that. They just like gunned me down on sight. And there was a couple times where I was like, okay, I just hit a save point, so I will go see if I can talk to these people. And I never could. So maybe I did it wrong. Maybe I missed something. But that was something that was really kind of set up to me early on. It was hinted at, and then I kind of feel like it didn't go anywhere. And because of that, I don't feel like I had any really meaningful NPC fights or conversations. Like I most of those any sequences where I could tell they were aggressive, I just snuck past them, and they either got killed by the xenomorph in that moment, or I just never saw them again, and I didn't even know who they were. So that was something that was a bit disappointing for me here, and I think could have helped add to, like, once again, this is a space station that's absolutely freaking huge. There are a lot of people aboard the ship, and it is being decommissioned. I'm sure a lot of people have left, but there is still a ton of people remaining, as we can see, when there's dead bodies everywhere. So that was a disappointing part of the game for me.
Yeah, there have been many a time when I'm not really sure. I'm trying to gauge the situation, and I'll see two like NPCs in this open like area. Like, okay, like this must be a safe spot, and I'll walk right up to one, and he turns down. He's like, "Oh God!" and he pulls his gun, and he'll kill me. I'm like, "Oh fuck!" That's annoying.
Yeah.
So you're right. You got to gauge it.
Yeah, it's just annoying. I guess one thing we haven't distinctly mentioned, but like the music and sound, I think for me the highlight would definitely be just the sound effects in this game are just outstanding. Every little beep and bloop, every sound effect that the ship makes, whether it is the stuff related to the tech, just like the sound of the alien bashing through the vent system is so good. The sound of the tram, like as you're waiting for it, I love that whenever you hit the button, it's not just an instant load screen. Like there are times I want this game to be quicker, and it's way too long, of course. But I was always happy to wait for 30 seconds for the tram to show up, because just that tension of like, oh, what if something shows up right here? That does happen at one point. I was like a scripted sequence where you hit that button and then you hear people from down the hall, and so you have to hide in a locker or something until they leave. But yeah, even just the sound and the vibration of like that tram as it's screeching to a halt to land in the station, I think is just perfect. And then the music, it's amazing. A lot of it are like pulling direct themes from that original movie. And so whenever those propped up, I'm like, oh, hell yeah. But anything else too, I think just really set the scene perfectly. So in terms of like the audio team here, just absolutely freaking nailed it. 10 out of 10 on that way.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. Oh, it's just they do such a good job with so much familiarity and so much stuff that it's its own thing, but it still just pulls all the best parts from that franchise, what was created in that first Alien. Like there's certain little beats that are in Aliens, and Aliens has its own very unique, distinct score, especially because it's more of an action-heavy film. But the first one being just a sci-fi horror. I'm glad that this game pulled mostly from just the first Alien. I think that's where it even the I like again we already talked about it, but just Aliens threw a queen in there, and this game they chose not to, and it just it goes to show that okay, they really just pulled heavily from that first film, and that's their inspiration, and I'm glad because it's so unique.
Yeah. I guess I did mention this in my brief overall at the beginning, but it's worth mentioning one more time. Face huggers, what do you do, Taylor? Like you want them to be in the game. You want them to be a gameplay mechanic. But then, like, how do you not have them be just like a one-shot kill on you as the player? Because to me, that was like, I just hated the facehuggers, and I guess I should hate them. But them being a one-hit kill with no ifs, ands, or buts, and being so small and annoying, I found them to be just more of a chore than anything else. Where it was just like, okay, I guess I'll do the save situation again. I never really found them scary either. I just didn't like them, but maybe I'm wrong about that. What'd you think of the face huggers?
It's their speed that just kind of pisses me off. And yeah, you gotta like, depending on what weapon you're using, you gotta be careful and you gotta time it. Like the stun baton can bite you in the ass if you miss and fudge that up. But yeah, you really like. It just comes down to timing and just dealing with it. Because yeah, it makes sense for it to just be like an insta death. Kind of thing, because that's what happens with these creatures. But I don't know, like having them there, it fits, and it's just going to be something that's in Alien Romulus as well. When we look at that, like, it's a huge part of this theme, the vibe of the films, everything, because it's that life cycle stage before we get to that xenomorph. So it's good that they included them. But yeah, they could just be an absolute pain in the ass. And I guess I'm happy that they're not like consistently, like every single mission you have to be worried about them like jumping out
Yeah,
of a vent,
it's true.
because we already got to deal with the main bad Xeno to begin
Yeah.
with. But yeah, they're still persistent enough to be a pain in the ass.
I kind of forgot about them for a while, honestly, because just so much of this game, like once again, long game. I feel like for the first half of it, at least, is just one xenomorph. You'll never encounter two at the same time. There's never anything else. There's like working Joes eventually that you have to fight against, and the odd NPC. But I kind of didn't like think about like, oh yeah, at some point there'll be like face huggers in this game, and how would they be implemented? I think for me, like part of it is that once they get you, like the screen just goes black and then it just like instantly ends, and it's like, would you like to load your save point? Like I feel like the tension of it, the scary factor isn't really there either. Like maybe a way around it, and maybe you could just make this an easy mode thing rather than like on nightmare mode, if you get hit you're done. But maybe it would have been, and I'm not often gonna be in favor of like quick time events, but I think that could have been a solution here, where if you get caught, maybe you have to like hit 5 buttons in a specific order real quick, and if you do that just quick enough, you can like rip them off and make the timing hard. Like make it a hard thing to do, but make it so there's maybe a bit of something you can do to fight against them, other than just like you hit your shot or you don't. So I don't know what the workaround would have been. I just think it's kind of weird, even on easy mode, that's just what happens. They didn't really have a workaround of maybe they just do like half your health or something like that. But maybe that would have been too easy. I'm not sure. I guess we didn't really specifically mention the other weapons. We just talked about the flamethrower, the pistol, shotgun, the bolt gun in particular. I really, really like. I think they're all solid. They all get the job done. It's not really a combat action game. You could probably play it like a combat action game, but it's more
It's
survival
not. I
horror.
don't advise it.
But yeah, like the guns, they all feel good in terms of like first person shooter standards and all that. So those are good to go.
Yeah, the pistol. I wish the pistol could do a little bit more with the Xeno.
Yeah, I never even bothered to shoot the Xeno. I just felt like it's not going to do anything. It's not worth my time. I maybe did early on before I had the flamethrower, just to see if I was like dead to rights already. But that would have been bold of me, just be like, oh yeah, my little pistol's going to take this guy down. Taylor, I've mentioned at the very start of this retro that I'd played like Alien 3. I randomly have that game on the NES, like some really old game. And then those are like the only Alien games I've played. And the Alien vs Predator game on the Xbox 360. Played the demo, the hell out of that. I talked about that. But you've kind of played a lot, if not all, of the Alien games that exist. Is this the best Alien game for you, or one of the other ones kind of take the lead for you?
This is for sure. I'd say top three. This is definitely
What's
three
in that
for
top
sure.
three with it?
The Alien vs Predator 2010 one, because the alien mechanics are fantastic.
Yeah, playing as alien is really fun in that game.
Really, really fun. There's so many cool things where you down a guy and then you can pick, like, you can do an execution on him where like you see a face hugger crawl up all of a sudden and like jump on him.
Nice.
That game did so many awesome things. Even for the Predator had some awesome highlights in there too. And you get confirmation in that game. They talk about the Xenomorph homeworld. Yeah, I love that. I know there's a big fan base for its predecessor. I think Alien vs. Predator 2000. It's like a classic. It's got online still support on Steam, I believe. Wow. And that's just got it's got like a cult following, I'd say. It's been wishlisted on my Steam for a while. And eventually I'll get it. It's super, super cheap.
Nice.
What else though? Not
Fireteam, Dark Descent. I'm trying to think of other ones.
I was gonna slide Dark Descent in there, which I need to go and play some more of. Now, Fireteam Elite is fun, but I think that community died pretty quick, and some of the stuff in there was just repetitive and not necessarily the most exhilarating experiences. But it was still very fun. It was cool. They introduced the pathogen, so there's a lot of Alien, Prometheus, Covenant kind of stuff that was incorporated into that game, which is very neat for the world building. And then you have Colonial Marines, which is super hated upon, the bane of Alien games. Many people did not like.
That's like a multiplayer like shooter one, right?
They had it. It has single player campaign, and then it has the multiplayer aspect as well. which you could play as the aliens in there in the multiplayer, but it was such a step down from what we've had in the past. It's like third person. It was pretty crappy, but
Right.
it was an okay campaign, and I like that it basically retconned Alien 3 and Alien Resurrection and continued the story. Hicks survives in that game, and you have a whole different story unfolding. But
Right.
Dark Descent, having the team-based mechanics and just again, it comes down to detail. This one has a lot of inspiration from Aliens, considering you're basically leading the charge with soldiers. But the fact that you can just like I think it's called the APC, send that and move it around to different locations in these little towns. You're moving your squad from building to building, doing different objectives while you're on the ground, saving people and civilians, getting them to your tank. You're all of a sudden, oh, there's a wave of aliens that are coming here. You set up a turret, you got to hold out while you're doing different objectives. Like it's just there's so many different things that are going on in that game, and I really like it for what they created, because I was afraid after Fireteam Elite that we're going to get another one similar to that, but no, Dark Descent really kind of changed it up. I should say actually, oh, you reminded me. Oh, hang on, let me
Go
grab
take a look. Taylor, with the corner of his eye, caught a glimpse of a game on his game shelf there.
I got this back. Oh, what was it? Before I lived here, and GameStop was EB Games. I used to check out the used game sections because I just love seeing what they had. And they had Alien vs. Predator Extinction. And this is an RTS game, and it is so much freaking fun.
I didn't know that existed.
It's not aged well, but you can play as Xeno's queen.
So are you telling me there's more Alien AVP games than there is movies? Because you said there's a 2001, 2010,
Yes.
and that one. Or is
There
that the 2000
absolutely
one?
is.
That's not the 2000 one that you mentioned.
This is not the 2001. This one came out, this is original Xbox. This was 2003.
Wow.
So yeah, yes, there is more AVP games than there are movies. So
The screenshots, not looking the most prime on that one.
no, this game it's old, and I've wanted so
not on
badly for this to be a remake. It's only Xbox, unless people ported it to PC through their own means. You're not going to be able to play it anywhere
Wow.
else.
Dude, that is one to whip out on the 24-hour stream. I guess I don't know if we,
totally.
because I doubt that's back compat, and I don't think we'd bring an original Xbox. But that is one that I would love to check out at some point. Wow, that's made by Rebellion, or no, the other one is. Maybe not that one, but yeah, sorry. The other, I was just looking at the Alien.
Rebellion did the 2010 one.
That's cool because they make the Sniper Elite games. That's a
do they
really
really?
cool pairing. Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, I should look more into some of these other ones. That's funny to me that there's more games than movies for that.
I didn't even think about that.
Crossover. So sorry, what is the top three? Because I feel like we just talked.
I forgot about this one, but this one would crack top 5 for sure. This would probably be this would be number 4, because the fact that it's an RTS game and you're just indulging in different like units that you can build. It's such a hoot, and it has a campaign for all 3 classes too, and then multiplayer. But I would go Alien vs. Predator 2010, because I get my Predator in there. So that's number 1. I would go Alien Isolation 2, and then 3 would be Dark Descent.
Nice. Okay, cool. Love it. Okay, I guess maybe the last thing here would be the DLC, which might be a bit of a shorter conversation here. But this game does have a lot of DLC, a lot of different DLC packs. Many of them are these kind of challenge mode missions, where I think you kind of have like a timer. You have to complete these goals. I don't know if there's randomization to them. I didn't play these, so I'm just kind of more mentioning them. I think maybe the cool thing to mention here is that some of these do include locations that didn't end up making it into the final game. So there are some unique locations that you'll get from the campaign. I think some of it is reused as well, so you might not get exclusively new areas. But then there is that I think it's called the Last Survivor DLC, which is the one where you go through that sequence from the original Alien movie. I don't know. What did you want to say about that one? Is there anything like gameplay-wise that differs from the core game, or is it kind of just it's cool that they kind of picked the sequence from the movie and made it kind of a playable video game section?
I just think it's fun to be able to experience it, because I think the Crew Expendable version, which I forgot that you could play as 2 other characters, not just Ripley. You could play as Parker, or you could play as Dallas, and so that's where I think it was after. What's
Parker
the
not
one
the
guy?
cat?
No.
Parker was the name of the cat. What's the cat's name?
Jinxie.
Okay, I don't know
I
why
think it was
thought his name was
Jinxie.
That's funny. No, I googled it. It's
Oh,
definitely not
Jonesy.
Jonesy. Okay,
Jonesy. Yeah, so Parker was he was one of the last three to die
yeah. Right.
because Ripley
I
didn't
remember
die.
him now that I'm looking at a picture. Yeah.
Yeah, he's the one who was ready to just start boxing this thing.
Yeah. That's
But yeah,
interesting.
so and then you get Dallas, obviously the captain. So there's that, and again,
Yeah.
it's cool to experience that. And then you have the last survivor, where yeah, you have to activate the self destruct. You're playing as Ripley, and you basically just got to get to the ship to escape after that. And that one definitely it sent me for a loop. That one was really tricky to pull off because the
Mm,
alien just kept getting in the way. But again,
right.
when you're in the set piece, like you've watched the movie, you know the movie, and to actually be walking around, it's the same thing from the main game where you're exploring the derelict spacecraft in LV-426, but in here you're walking around the Nostromo, and it feels different from Sevastopol because this is
Hmm.
its own setting, which is nice. But I can't imagine how much fun the designers had just watching the
Yeah.
movie, getting to just look into the backlog of content. Like, oh, okay, we're gonna sketch this out. We're gonna just design this 3D world based on the original movie. That's such
Yeah.
a cool concept.
There's clearly so much, love for this source material from the developers here. Like, this is definitely a passion project and not just like, oh, we got the rights to make a game here. Let's just like poop something out in 10 months and see what's like the best we can do. Like, this is
Hmm.
clearly a really, really well made game, even if I have just a, a lot of beefs with the final product of it. But yeah, I think this, like, all these DLCs sound interesting and cool. And I mean, I'll probably go through that Ripley one. I got to be specific. I got to remember that I got to be specific here. The Ellen Ripley one. I'll probably go through that like prior to Romulus here, and so I don't know if I have anything new to say on it. I'll bring it up on a side quest here, but I think
Hmm.
otherwise those do seem like maybe you go through the main game one time, you kind of see what it's like, and then if you want to go through the game again and really test those mechanics and your skill set, that's maybe where those kind of those challenge maps and things could come in because once again, like this game is so long that it's like I don't know. Unless you have just a ton of free time, you're probably not going to just keep replaying through this game and mastering it. But that's what like a
Hmm.
challenge map type thing is kind of perfect for, where it's like a smaller sequence of the game, less time commitment in that way. So I think it's cool that those things exist. There's definitely a lot of that to dig into. So whenever I'm feeling the itch for this game again, I'll definitely go and check some of that content out. It's pretty cool that they had it. Like maybe they clearly didn't make enough, or the team didn't have the interest to go ahead and make that sequel, but they clearly had enough to do a bunch of extra content after it was out and just kind of take like, hey, we made all these mechanics. What are some other fun things we can do with this like engine that we've built to make this crazy cool game? So,
Hmm.
anything else that hasn't come up yet?
I don't think so. We covered a lot of ground. I'm really happy about it.
Yeah, I like I said, I'm very happy that I finally played through this game. I'm glad that you wanted to discuss it here with the Alien Retrospective. I think I some of these other games in this that you mentioned, Fireteam Elite or Dark Descent, has been on my radar since it came out, and even going back to play some of these AVP games. Like I definitely want to do that at some point. So I don't know if we would just do a random retro or maybe if another Alien movie's coming out, we would choose to do another episode for a retrospective or something. But yeah, there's a lot of other cool games that exist out there, but I think this was the perfect one to pick for this circumstance here. Like I said, long it's been on the backlog, and I'm glad I can finally check it off that box. So I don't. I think I would give this game like an 8 out of 10, 7.5, somewhere in that pocket, just because once again it is such an impressive game in terms of just how it's made. That even if I have a lot of beefs with it, it's more just like I don't have too many major cons. It's just a bunch of little things, and that kind of takes it down from that kind of perfect experience for me. But yeah, really really cool game, really fun time. Do you want to throw a number on this guy? We don't normally do that on video game stuff, but I don't know. Wanna,
I'd throw down an 8.5 out of 10.
there it
I'm
is.
docking it because similar to you, there's a little bit of fine things around throughout the gameplay that just kind of like throw me for a loop. Certain things that I didn't like we talked about the saving, and there are a couple other things too.
Mm-hmm.
But all in all, it's a really good game, and if you're a fan of the Alien franchise, I could not recommend this enough. Like you're just
Mm-hmm.
gonna eat it all up. You're gonna enjoy it. You're gonna really appreciate the time that's been invested into this game. It is long. as you said, and that does detract it a little bit. But yeah, it's nice. It feels like a passion project, and I hope that we get a follow up or get something else built off of this. So
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe Romulus is huge at the box office, and Disney wants to just push a ton of money into funding all sorts of alien things. We've seen that happen before. So,
mhm.
I don't mean we just got Dark Descent last year too. So they're still making games like this. So I don't know. I don't know if
Yeah.
this studio would be interested in making another one because I feel like just in general, this game seemed to get pretty mixed reviews. I don't really know what the other like reviewers' issues were with the game. I think I saw length was one thing that generally across the board people were kind of beefing with. But I don't know. I feel like I don't even know this game sold very well. I'm not too sure where it exists in the grand scheme of things. But anyway, this was a very fun discussion, very good time. Taylor, thanks for joining me here. Next week we'll be back for more side quests. I don't actually know what we're talking about next week, so a bit of a question mark there. But stay tuned. Thanks everyone for listening, and we'll see you again next time. Bye bye.